So when looking for a topic for this week's video, I ran a poll on my Discord server. Which, by the way, if you don't want to miss the next one, make sure to join, there'll be a link in the description. And between Jeff the Killer and Sonic.EXE, the winner was Sonic. Big shocker, I know, you even read the title. But why did I pick these two specifically? Was it the nostalgia of them being one of the first creepypastas I ever read? Do they hold some kind of significance to me? No. I just felt in the mood to talk about something really poorly written. And for Sonic.EXE's case, at least with the original story, it is an absolutely poorly written pile of trash. Maybe back in ye olden days I thought it was good because my brain had not fully developed at that point, but looking back on the creepypasta itself, all it had going for it was the original story, the original game, and survive and kill the killers in Area 51. I used to play that game a lot. The Roblox horror music is engraved into the walls of my brain. However, I would be lying if I didn't say that it's had its glow up over the years. With recent retakes on the game and the story itself becoming prevalent throughout, well, anywhere. And I'm going to show you just how much justice these medias do to improving upon the original concept. But, of course, we need to start with the original story first. I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everybody else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed, I liked how you get to explore the towns in it, until I noticed out of my peripheral vision that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I paused my game to go and see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle, let's just call him that, whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognized his handwriting. Though, what was weird is how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle had been having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late, and I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it, he's after me. And if you don't destroy this CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him. But do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game, that's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc could do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked on the disc and it looks like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except that it had black marker on it written Sonic.EXE. And it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome! Because like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start, there was a split second when I saw the title image turn into something much different. Something that I now consider horrifying before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666, and the water had turned red like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic. But the freakiest thing that was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding with 2 glowing red dots staring right at me, and his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 more seconds or so, and then another weird thing happened. The save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up, and I was like, what the fuck was that doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something off. The background was a dark cloudy sky from the Bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD, and there were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound, only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image for the save files, where you would see a preview of the level you're on, was just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked, it was really creepy, but as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared. Or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked file 1 and chose Tails. But when I selected and got started, the game froze for about 5 seconds and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more, and then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red and the title showed only Hill, Act 1. The screen faded in and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in the green hill zone from Sonic 1. The music was different though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that Tails kept running along the level. There was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones very slowly as I kept going. I suddenly saw something and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before, so I had him move along. And he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers and he moves past more dead animals. I was shocked to see how they all died. It looked like somebody had killed them in a rather gruesome way. A squirrel was hanged on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out with his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. After a minute passed after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back against Tails, with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting as if he wasn't totally oblivious to Tails' presence. Tails walked slowly towards Sonic. Then I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this must have been a cutscene. Suddenly I began to have a growing feel of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger and something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic and stopped and struck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image. Though there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about 7 seconds and in white text appeared forming a message, saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level, with the level title now saying Hide and Seek. This time I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3 and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the 4th wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme where you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2 was playing as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly I heard that creepy laugh again, that awful Kefka laugh. Right after 10 seconds had passed as I helped Tails run through the forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere in the screen, again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic.EXE, except it was just Sonic and he had the black and red eyes again. Only this time he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox as he gained up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down from those blackened eyes of Sonic's as the grin slowly grew in his face. As he looked down as the horrified fox, I could not do anything but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went to black. There was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text returned, only this time it said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And then that god-awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. Him and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? I shook the shock off as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding, his orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again, and the screen cut to black and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time, the level said, "You can't run." I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch, a hack, or some kind of sick, twisted joke. Or anything, really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark, reddish, cloudy sky. But it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Gygas' theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much. Moreover, he looked a little bit unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails did and looked as if he wasn't sure about what was going on, but I made him move anyway. He ran down a straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple of times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible is going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseating, walking down this bloodstained road. But I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes and then red static appearing again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but a black screen with text saying, "Found you." Anyway, red static came again and then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time that high-pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke before I could even land a hit. That terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and then I made him punch again. But Sonic vanished again, laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more, and even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with. So little time. Would you agree? What the hell? What is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray, his dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. And he had this look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap. I wish I hadn't, cause I then began to have the most disturbing nightmare. It was pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by the lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and run away before he gets you too. Their cries died out and then I heard Sonic laugh. His laugh. It sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh. You're a lot of fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle. Though he didn't last long. I was scared. I looked around for the source of the voice. Won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking towards me, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now. Just like the others. When he grabbed me, I saw his bleeding, black and red-eyed grinning face. I woke up with a fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening, so I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the level title appeared again, and this time it said ... which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it has its pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered, the walls were a dark greyish purple, and the animated candle light with a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was a dark purple curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain sways very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song, but I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look in his face as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did have a little animation where I left him standing. He turns his head to the left and the right at least twice and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he is or what's going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation, you know, when you've beaten him at the end of the classic Sonic game and you chase him, as we continued going through the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downwards. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of itself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls had gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. Then we landed into another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs down. This one was much longer, took at least 1 full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again, and the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more dark red and the torches were now a black flame. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed that he looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped out right in front of Robotnik the same way he did to Knuckles, and then red static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds and then it showed me the most unpleasant image. The image showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic standing in the darkness, where you can only see his face while his head and torso faded into black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean like, he looked so real that you could actually see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. His face. Oh god, he had the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes were wide and black once again, crying blood, which also looked hyper-realistic. And then there were 2 glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic, it literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking. Somewhat yellow, and from the looks of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh in his lips and fangs as if he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for a solid 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It just took 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. And then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard a Kefka laugh. Except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. I went back to the image again, except this time there was text, but it was all messed up. It was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. I am God. It was when I read that message while looking at Sonic when it hit me. I realized right then and there. This Sonic was a monster. A pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys. And the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world, and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the red static came again. This time much louder and distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a solid good 7 seconds. Then it stopped, and showed nothing but a black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round 2, Tom? The Kafka laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the third save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull grey, his mustache drooped and had blackened. His glasses broke and blood was coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik and cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through, and they're forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off, and I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his games in more ways than one. And then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game, literally drags you into hell where he can play with you always, as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer, I think it's stuck in there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard the voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes. And starting off the overview, I want to say that was one of the hardest times that I have ever had making one of these voiceovers to try and stay serious. I did that many takes that I just ended up giving up. That's how little I can take this story seriously because of how many cliches are in it. Like, it is going a little bit fucking off script here. There was a rant from the dude that made this story, because they took his story off of the creepypasta wiki for being too cliche. And I'm gonna read it right at the end of the video. So stick all the way to the end of the fucking video to watch me read that, because it's a thing. But as you can see, the original story itself does not hold up to the test of time. The story is absolutely littered with cliches and is almost impossible for me to take it seriously. And the scare at the end, quote unquote, isn't even a scare. It's like one of those things about Chucky. It's a doll. Just kick it out the window. It's not your problem anymore. However, I don't want to make this whole video about me absolutely beating the shit out of this dead old story. I mean, in the end, it is still pretty nostalgic for me and probably a lot of you watching this video. So, let's just move on to the games. Now, in the original Sonic.EXE game that we're all familiar with, there isn't really that much to talk about. I mean, it's a pretty spot-on recreation of what happens to Tom in his copy of the game, which speaks for itself and the quality of the game. It mainly consists of just walking to the right, a spooky thing happens, move on to the next character. And at some point, the game got an update which added voice acting, which is,
You're too slow.
It could be better, but since this one is so close to the original story, I won't be talking about it too in-depth, but just keep it in mind when I'm talking about the next two. I also just want to quickly point out that I'm not going to be going into any of these too in-depth because my videos are only meant to be 23 minutes long and it took 18 minutes to read that story. But if you want to go play the games or watch the medias that I'm going to be talking about yourself, I heavily suggest it. These games are really decently good, and I suggest going and playing them for yourself. They have pretty good atmosphere. Moving on to a more recent addition to the game side of things, we have Sonic.EXE, also known as sonicedit.rom/EYX. And as of right now, the game is being remade by its now solo developer, Kua16. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but we're going with it. Since it appears that Cloudy Doll, who also worked on the original game, is no longer associated with the game, for reasons that for the life of me I couldn't find out. But the game is still in development, and from one of the images on the page, it looks really promising. I mean, just looking at this from an art perspective, there's a really good improvement in these sprites, especially with the one of Tails on the end. But the original version of the game was made as a submission to Luigi Kid's EXE challenge, all the way back in March of 2022, which makes the game pretty recent because last time I checked, the fucking original game was made back in 2012. So in a decade of progress, I can say that this version of Sonic.EXE is a pretty big improvement. And as to not spoil how good this game really is, I implore you to go and play it for yourself. These are just some little snippets of the game that I'm showing you in the background, but I can tell you that the atmosphere, the story, and just the general vibe of the game really matches that of what the original story was trying to go for. The concept of a haunted cartridge with some kind of like malevolent person inside is really well made in this game. I mean, even just the fourth wall breaks are so much better in this version. Things like creating tabs on your computer and moving the game around on your screen and having some pretty unnerving imagery in certain parts. It even improves some parts of the actual story itself, and just go play the game or watch someone play it because it is really good. And even though it isn't a full game, especially with the newer development on the way, but you can still play the legacy version as of right now. It is already a step in the right direction, and if this newer version of the game eventually comes up, you will bet your ass I'm making a video going in depth about this game because it really does the story justice. Moving on to talk about another recent title, we have Sonic PC port. Once again, I'm not going to be going into in depth, but this game is just in its beta phase, and I also want to point out that there are two versions of the PC port game. The original, which is a recreation of the original EXE game created by Job Doughboy, and the remaster, which is what I'll be talking about here, which has a whole team about it, still including Job Doughboy. However, the game is now under John-kun instead. And I wouldn't be lying to you if I said I had no idea if this game is still in development or not. Anything that I can find about the game is from 2021, and there's about 3 different situations where they've cancelled the game. Oh wait, no, they haven't cancelled the game. Wait, no, actually. And it's just really confusing, and I'm not gonna try and fry my brain looking for the answer. God knows that thing is already fried enough as it is. But just looking at the trailer, which is what I've been showing to you guys, this game looks really decent. Even in its music track, which, hold on a second. Also, volume warning, I got my ears blasted out by this, but that doesn't mean that you guys have to be. As of right now, it seems like there's only gameplay of Tails' segment. However, I'm sure that if this game is still in development, then the rest of the game will hopefully turn out just as good as these parts are to be shown. but let's move on to something a little more hands-free. Also, just recording this a little bit off script after the fact that I've recorded everything else. Also, I have my heater on in the background. It's really fucking cold. So if you can hear that, that's why. While researching for this game, which by the way, I forget to mention it anywhere, but I'm probably missing a shit ton of stuff because I only have like a week, not even that, like less than a week to research about these games. So if you know literally anything more about like the development of any of these games or like medias or whatever, please let me know in the comments, because especially with this game, it looks insanely promising and I want to know if it's still in development. But I just want to give you guys a moment to listen to a little bit more of the soundtrack that is in this game, because while researching for clips to show you guys, I came across this ungodly track, which has to be probably my favorite track out of all of these games. And unfortunately, for the first thing that we're going to be talking about in this section, I was going to tell you guys about Needle Mouse, because I remember watching it and thinking that it was really good. However, it turns out that the series has either been pirated or deleted, because it is impossible to find the original uploads, and while Shut Up JoJo's account is still there, Needle Mouse is non-existent. And from the looks of it, it just seems to be a regular case of the internet being the internet and a weird fandom had formed around it, which is why he either once again pirated it or deleted it. There are a few re-uploads here and there, but just out of respect to JoJo, I won't be talking about it whilst it's still pirated. Instead, I'll tell you guys about Vibing Leaf's work on the series, which I would also heavily suggest going and watching Vibing Leaf's other stuff, because it's just really high quality and really well made. They've made a lot of videos featuring other creepypastas, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned them in my video about Smile Dog at some point, with their video titled Smile.jpg. But I'm going to specifically be talking to you about their Doomed series, which once again, just to keep the video short and also because I heavily advise you go and watch the series yourself and go support both Vibing Leaf and everyone else who I've mentioned in this list. But I'll only be talking to you about the first 3 videos. Starting off in the video sleepyhills.mp4, we find ourselves in a version of Green Hill Zone at the time of dusk. With some seemingly normal gameplay going on, we see our player, presumably named Nick due to the name in the bottom left corner, just running around the level while this mix between an eerie and comfy music plays in the background. And just looking at everything, we can tell that something is a little bit off, if the music and the atmosphere didn't already tell you that. Each cliff that Sonic jumps from has this weird faded dithering effect, like it's fading away. Honestly, we don't get much time to focus on this though before a giant pixeled void appears in front of us, and we don't get much time to think about it before Nick doesn't even hesitate to jump off. In the second video, Landing on Void, we are greeted by an area sign that just says where, already putting us into the perspective that we don't know where we are, and once Sonic comes on screen, we are greeted to a very grungy looking marble environment, with a red background playing that oh so familiar tune. Littered around are red rings that our player seemingly runs around picking up, before falling into the death box and dying, restarting the level. We see him now trying to avoid the red rings. This time he makes the jump and the background disappears. The music becomes muffled and begins to sound like it's coming from the left direction. Coming into the third video, we get a quick message. Hello everyone. I and Nick are no longer alone discovering this ROM hack anymore. Liam joins the party. Without my friend Liam, I would not have shown some discoveries that were found in the game files. Thank you, Liam. So, thank you, Liam, for helping me with this. Now, first, before I show any update, I'd like to address things that didn't make it into past footages. People have been pointing out that Sonic's name is now changed into Nick, which is my name. At the beginning of the ROM hack, the game asks you to choose a name. Neat! The game continued casually until Green Hill Act 3 as Sonic 1. Only difference is that the scroll was slightly off, but that's about it. Now into the video.
Don't let them get you.
There is still a lot of other videos in this series that I haven't mentioned, so I heavily suggest you go and watch them. Vibing Leaf is a very talented creator, and it's very worth the watch. I also just want to point out that there's a lot of other medias that do real justice to the original concept of the story, and I want to give a small mention to the Starved Eggman and Furnace characters, which, while the original story of him and his creators is pretty foggy, Eggman was originally created by Avery and Dumby, but I cannot find who he belongs to now since both of the Twitter accounts for the two are either taken down or aren't in use, and it seems like they were given off to some other person, which then gave them off to another person. And it seems like as of right now, his concept has been expanded to mostly FNF mods and sprite videos. And while I'm not a big fan of FNF, I will admit that sometimes the mods are pretty decent, and in the side of Starved Eggman, it is a pretty creepy concept. He's a variation of Dr. Robotnik who goes crazy for Mobian flesh after trying it one time. Which, by the way, Mobians are just what the characters of Sonic are. Although if you look at the description, it just kind of seems like another word for furries. Which also isn't wrong. But while the original story isn't very good, there are a lot of really good interpretations and takes out there, and while I haven't gone into any of them really in depth, if I could have made a longer video, I definitely would have, because these games are so incredible and do incredible justice to the concept. But that will be all for our little trip down memory lane. The Sonic.EXE story has gotten a significant glow up over the years, and while some of the things I mentioned in today's video no longer exist or are privated for their own reasons, these media still do the story justice in their own different ways, and I suggest you to go play, watch, etc. these pieces yourself. I didn't talk a lot about the content here because it is really something to be experienced for yourself, and I also don't want to make another longer than usual video. It really fries my brain after doing it. But if you did enjoy the video and you want to see me make more content like this, obviously next time going into a little bit more in depth with the actual creepypasta itself, make sure to stick around and subscribe, and also join the Discord so you don't miss the next poll. I do a lot of them, so make sure not to miss them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. I deeply regret to inform you all that I have received some bad news. The admins of the creepypasta wiki have finally decided to delete Sonic.EXE off of the wiki, on the grounds that it was badly written, had too many cliches, and was a bad example of what should be a creepypasta. Bull freaking horse shit. As you can see, I am furious with the fact that my masterpiece, which has won the hearts of millions, and has made a massive impact on the internet, is being brought down by a bunch of jealous, arrogant infuriators. But that does not mean that I am going to just sit down and take this lightly. No, 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 no. They have been messing with the ball, and now they've called out the horns. Listen, everyone, I need your help with this. We are at war here. I want every Sonic.EXE fan who is oh wait, no, that's in quotation marks. I want every Sonic.EXE fan who is reading this to get the word out. I want you to tell every other Sonic.EXE fan out there, every fanatic, every artist, every follower of my creation about this. Tell your friends who are also Sonic.EXE fans if they have to. Tell them we have to keep the spirit of Sonic.EXE alive. I have to fucking take a break, my god. Make more fan art, make more videos, block the haters, praise Sonic.EXE like you would never have before, build websites dedicated to his greatness. Whatever you gotta do to keep him alive and strong, just do it. The deletion of Sonic.EXE from the wiki is but a minor cut in our flower of greatness, my friends. And that cut has done nothing but further the spreading, and we are the pollen of this flower. And we need to prepare for the victory over the haters. The haters need to bleed for their crimes. Rejoice, my fellow Sonic.EXE fans. Our glorious little hellspawn shall have the laugh yet. This will be ultimate victory. The absolute subjugation of the internet itself. Oh my god. This is so fucking stupid.